The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this December 16th. It's a Monday, and I am back in Puerto Rico, my office, our studio, ready to resume our regular shows. We still have to get that music right. All right, there's still some fixes that need to happen due to the new computer, but we will get there. I hope everybody is having a phenomenal time, phenomenal weekend, phenomenal week, and getting ready for Christmas. This has not been a typical holiday season for me. I've basically been traveling. There was no Thanksgiving this year. Didn't have Thanksgiving. And I just got back, and it doesn't feel like holiday, and Christmas is around the corner next week, and the whole thing is just upside down. So I haven't had that time of, quiet reflection that you get at the end of the year. I'm missing it. All right. Anyway, we've got a full load of stuff that we will talk about, can talk about. We've got Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare. We've got Peter Thiel's comments on the Luigi murderer. I found just bewildering and bizarre. You'll watch it. Tell me what you think. We'll talk about Trump on a few economic issues. Maybe we'll talk about Russian economy, EU, Latin America trade deal is coming down the pipe. Big one. Justin Trudeau might be in trouble. There were rumors earlier today that he was going to resign. I don't think he's going to, but there were rumors he was going to resign. And that would be pretty amazing. That would be the first victory Trump will achieve for all of us if he can get Trudeau to resign. We'll talk about that. Vaccines and autism, a few comments on that, just for what the hell, why not? Although somehow, what happened to the vaccines and autism? They disappeared. All right, we'll get to them. And then we'll talk about nuclear power, we'll talk about energy, and we'll talk about Gaza, particularly the Gaza deaths, how the Palestinian Authority has been counting them, and how accurate people think those counts are. And I'll give you some examples. So we'll get into the weeds a little bit on Gaza death tolls. And finally, we'll talk about sex. The video of me talking about that woman who had sex with 100 guys got a lot of views. Sex always sells. And the comments are just enlightening. So both enlightening in terms of the confusions they represent, and enlightening because of the state of the culture. Maybe these opinions and these views were always there, but it's a good opportunity to talk about what Objectivism view is regarding selfishness, what Objectivism view is regarding the spiritual. Does religion have a monopoly over the spiritual? And then lastly, what Objectivism view of sex is. So we'll talk about all of that. Referring to the particular comments involved that people left on the video, and which is great because you get firsthand experience with people's nuttiness, confusions, maybe nuttiness. Anyway, we'll do all of that. I think today is the first real test of my beautiful, tiny, little Apple Mini computer. So far, much better. All opening the windows has been smoother, moving things around smoother. No lags, no frustrations, no everything's. So it's good. So so far so good. We'll see if we can keep that up, and yeah, I think that'll make my life a lot easier if that is indeed the case. What else do we want to say? Yeah, I think we're good. All right, so let's jump in. Should we jump in? You didn't bring your Mac Mini on the road? No, it's not worth it. I've got a laptop. Everything runs fine on the laptop as long as we have enough bandwidth. I just don't have as many windows open on the laptop, but it runs fine on my much weaker, less memory, less everything laptop than the Mac Mini. The only real difference is here I have solid bandwidth when as long as the internet's working, and it's a wired connection and it's super fast. And on the road, I'm relying on usually Wi-Fi, and it's not very good. Yeah, and the computer's a bit of a challenge, and the sound and video are not going to be quite as good quality, but I'm not going to carry this big camera around. I'm not going to carry the soundboard around. So it is what it is. It is what it is. All right, anyway, we're back home for a while. 3 weeks, I think. Yeah, 3 weeks before I travel again. And January will be on and off, kind of busy. And February, I should be home the whole month. March will be busy. April will be very busy. May will be busy towards the end. Anyway, we'll see how it all goes. We'll see how it all goes. I might take the Mini, like if I go again to Europe for 6 weeks, like I did last year. This year, I might take the Mini because it's so small, it's so easy to carry, and it just elevates the experience significantly. All right. Yes, I am busy, making a living, doing talks, spreading the word, changing the world, having an impact, hopefully, on people, and yeah, moving the needle. All right, let's see. I haven't commented on the drones in New Jersey because I have nothing to say. I don't live in New Jersey. I haven't seen them. But the drones in New Jersey are almost certainly an example of what happens periodically, around mass hysteria, where basically people have no clue. People start seeing things that are not there. People see things and conspiracy arise. And, of course, given that we live in a world where people can't think and a world where people are very inclined towards conspiracies. Michigan in April, that's right. Jennifer reminds me of Michigan in April. Conspiracy theories and yeah, it's pretty funny. It's pretty funny what's going on in New Jersey, and it's at the headlines every single day. And clearly, much of it is just airplanes. Some of it are commercial drones. Some of them are hobbyist drones. Some of them are law enforcement drones. Many of them are just regular airplanes and helicopters, and some of them probably are even just star constellations. Maybe it's a satellite that they see, one of those Starlink satellites that are moving through the sky. Anyway, most of it is just mass hysteria, mass panic, people seeing what they read they should be seeing. So it's all BS. There's no story. It's complete nonsense. And that's where we are. We're at a place of lots of nonsense. All right, I'm seeing a lot of $1, $2, $5 questions. I need to see some 20s and 50s so we can really make progress here. All right, where do we want to start? Yes, we're going to start with Brian Johnson. Yep. So, Brian Thompson. So, one of the tragedies here, and this Luigi guy, obviously a sick puppy, a kid who's made some really, really bad choices, but yet again, competent enough to be able to build his own gun, get a silencer, or print a silencer on a 3D printer. Researchers pray, find who he wants to shoot, and then really, like a pro, shoot the guy in the back, make sure he's dead, and walk away. So you gotta, this guy might be crazy or might be psychologically sick, but he's also incredibly competent and has certain faculties completely there. It's a combination, right? And I think the response to what he did is more, in many respects, is scarier than what he did. He's a one-off. But the wanted posters, the commentary, the weak defense of United Healthcare, the weak defense of its CEO, the guy was killed. Just the whole thing, is just sickening and upsetting and disappointing, and and then of course this is a great opportunity to gang up against insurance companies, right? So I thought it would be worth just a minute to say something about Brian Thompson, who I don't think was just a nobody, just a gray-suited businessman. This was an extraordinary business leader. This is a guy who came from a small farm, worked incredibly hard, was smart by all accounts, did well in high school and did well in college, and rose up through United Healthcare, a pretty competitive company, a very large company, and by all accounts was a good guy. Was the kind of manager that inspired the people under him, a kind of manager who really led the company, and this is given the regulatory environment in which insurance companies have to function, this guy did a great job, and by all accounts was really, really good at what he did. And we're talking about a massive company, right? He's described a perfectionist and somebody who really took United Healthcare, the part of the United Healthcare, the insurance business of United Healthcare, to the next level. Now, there are a lot of complaints about United Healthcare, but most of it is the same mud-rocking business always suffers from. Very few claims are denied by United Healthcare. And the few claims that are denied are usually not denied for healthcare or medical reasons. That is, they're not overturning some serious recommendation of a doctor. He was very. He claimed to be very customer centric, very focused on the customer. Was trying to elevate the image of United Healthcare and do a better job vis-a-vis their interaction with the customer. By all accounts, a good guy. I'll also say that, this is a company, just to remind you, that covers 50 million people. 50 million people. So this is the biggest insurer in the country. They're going to get a lot of flack. And one of the things that Thompson realized in the months before he died, was that insurance was, in his company in particular, were viewed very negatively in the public, and was starting to take steps to try to address that. It's a real problem. It's a real difficult problem. He was completely aware of it and thought it was unjust, and was trying to improve customer service and customer communication so that the industry was better understood. During COVID, it sounds like he really stepped up. There was a point at which there was this pool of money allocated for hospitals and regional health centers, to be able to keep running and to be able to keep paying payroll and to be able to keep providing services when everything was in lockdown. But the government had no idea how to get the money to the hospitals, had no idea how to get the money to these regional healthcare providers. And Thompson stepped up and created a organization within the organization that basically allocated these resources to the places they needed to be used. We're talking about billions and billions of dollars, and $135 billion to be exact. So it was distributed through a United Health-backed fund, United Health Fund, and supposedly kept thousands of hospitals and other healthcare providers afloat during the pandemic. So it's a guy with initiative. I mean, a real CEO, a real business leader. And we should remember that, and we should celebrate that. He was, by all accounts, one of the good guys. One of the good guys. And it's tragic. It's tragic that he was killed, even if this is not the beginning of a wave of murders of CEOs. I really hope it's not. I don't think it is. I think this Luigi guy was obviously a nutcase who has real psychological problems. But the response has been scary in terms of how many people supported this. Now, in that context, I want to play you a clip. It's a minute 26 of Peter Thiel being asked by Piers Morgan about what he would say to people who celebrated Luigi Mangione, the murderer. What would he say to those people? And now, this is Peter Thiel, one of the great venture capitalists of our world, really one of the great business leaders in the 21st century, one of the PayPal mafia, somebody who really helped tilt Silicon Valley to the right, good or bad, as that might be, but he is the first guy who tilted that way and brought along the others. This is a guy who has an appreciation for businesses, run businesses, obviously invested in many businesses. Can he defend? Can he speak out against the murderer of an American businessman? So let's watch what he has to say.
And to those who think this shooter is a hero because he did it because he said this healthcare executive was presiding over a healthcare system which kills thousands of Americans by denying them cover, what would you say to them?
I don't know what to say. I still think you should try to make an argument, and I think this is you should, there may be things wrong with our healthcare system, but you have to make an argument, and you have to try to find a way to convince people and change it by that. And this is not going to work.
Peter,
I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all sorts of things one could say about it, but I don't think, and I think the motives feel, I don't want to go into all the particulars here, but I don't think there's anything heroic about them.
All right, so that's the best Peter Thiel can come up with, is I don't think there's anything heroic about them. And he's saying, look, the problems in the healthcare system, he doesn't actually say this, but murder's not the way to solve them. We should be talking about it. No moral condemnation, no horror at the fact, no horror at the fact that, Piers Morgan explicitly asks him about the people who think that Luigi is a hero. No judgment. This is an incredibly articulate guy. Now, he almost always thinks before he speaks. I'll give him credit for that. And you saw probably, 30 seconds of the minute 26 is him thinking. But where's the moral defense of business? Where's the idea that businessmen should just not be shot? Can a non-committal, wishy-washy. A lot can be said about this. He's not a hero. Unbelievably evasive. It's sickening and disappointing. I know Peter Thiel. I mean, this is a guy who loves Ayn Rand, read Atlas Shrugged more than once, read The Fountainhead more than once. And this is the best he can do on big-time television. To comment on a CEO who's just being murdered, it's just, I mean, more than anything, it's sad. It's pathetic. It's disappointing. It's, come on. Energy, some passion, some moral outrage, judgment. I don't know. Who is he trying not to piss off? Or is he trying to seem sophisticated here because you recognize there's the problem with the healthcare system? I will do a show. By the way, I'm looking for a sponsor. Here's a challenge for you guys. I'm looking for somebody to sponsor my healthcare show. I'm going to do a show on this. Or if I get a sponsor, I'll do the show. As I told you, I'm doing shows. I'm doing a series of shows on how to unwind statist America. So I'm going to do the financial institutions, how to deregulate finance. I've got a sponsor for that. Alex Epstein said he would sponsor a show on how to unwind statist regulation of immigration, and he would do a show on how to unwind or how in a rational setting we should have a relationship with China. So those two shows Alex is going to sponsor. And then I'm looking for a sponsor now to how to unwind the healthcare business. And as part of that, show how healthcare in America today is completely statist. There's no free market in healthcare in the United States. Just show some of that. So if somebody wants to sponsor it, it's $1,000. Sponsor that show. That would be great. So I'm looking for a sponsor for the healthcare session on deregulating America. If you're not live and you can't just say on the chat that you want to sponsor it, you can email me at yaron@yaronbrookshow.com. All right. I've said everything else I want to say about the Brian Thompson story, but I mean, we'll keep an eye on everything else that is going on related to it. All right, so I don't know. Everybody keeps telling me, all over the world, really, because I get this all over the world, not just in the United States. I get this. Yaron, you're too pessimistic. You've got to give Trump a chance. I mean, he's saying and doing some really good things. Elon Musk is there, and he's a good guy. And Vivek, everybody loves Vivek. And Andreessen is getting involved, and a bunch of Silicon Valley people are getting involved, and they want innovation, and they want to bring the innovative spirit to government, and they want to do these things. And it's just basically super exciting. And so I've been thinking, maybe I should give Trump a break. And I was thinking of doing a segment on the show. Maybe good things can happen. And maybe good things can happen. I mean, if the Silicon Valley people can really get stuff done, that'd be great. And they could. They really could get stuff done. And that'll be a game changer in spite of all the other bad stuff Trump does. If we can just change the whole attitude towards government, and that'd be pretty cool. So I keep thinking maybe I'm being too pessimistic, and maybe these guys will really bring this free market spirit into the White House. And it's difficult because, God, I'm giving a talk on art in Tokyo at a gallery, at an art gallery, and a guy starts arguing with me about Trump. I mean, you can't escape it. It's everywhere. They love him, and if not Trump, then it's Musk and Vivek and Silicon Valley and all this stuff, and people some of them people I really respect, right? Bitcoin is through the roof. By the way, because government is going to invest in it, which I find unbelievably ironic for the anti-government Bitcoin promoters. Now the value of Bitcoin is dependent on the government's what do you call it? Strategic reserve. Maybe we'll talk about that at the end of the show, if I have time. If not, we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it on a different show. The whole strategic reserve is actually the funniest story around. The funniest story around. Anyway, we've got Doja, or whatever you want to pronounce it or call it. It doesn't really matter. It's it sounds super exciting and super interesting, and they're going to deregulate. Massive deregulations are coming, and all of them. And then, just as I'm pivoting and I'm being seduced and tempted, maybe to be a little bit, slightly, moderately positive about some aspect of Trump, Trump posts this. When was this? This was on the 12th, 4 days ago, on Truth, whatever. What's it called? Truth Social. And I quote Donald J. Trump. He just finished a meeting with the International Longshoremen Association and its president, Harold Daggett, and executive VP, Dennis Daggett. Dennis Daggett and Harold Daggett. Do you think the president and the executive VP might be related? I don't know. Do you think? You think there's some nepotism at the International Longshoremen Association? Probably not, right? I mean, it's a pretty performance-driven, merit-based entity, so probably not a lot of nepotism. But anyway, I found that's interesting. Harold Daggett and Dennis Daggett. Anyway, Donald Trump continues. There's been a lot of discussion having to do with automation on the United States docks. Some of this is too funny, so I'm reading it with, I'll laugh in between because it's this next sentence is really, really, really funny, right? But it's typical Donald Trump funny, right? I'm quoting again from Donald Trump. I've studied automation and know just about everything there is to know about it. I mean, this isn't him extemporaneously speaking and just bullshitting, just as he's speaking. This is him. This is writing. This is, I've studied automation and know just about everything there is to know about it. The amount of money saved is nowhere near the distress, hurt, and harm it causes for American workers. In this case, our longshoremen. Foreign companies have made a fortune in the U.S. by giving them access to our markets. Oh, we have done foreign companies such an amazing favor. We do it every day. We make them this favor by giving them access to our markets. We sacrifice to do it. But we're good guys, so we let them sell us stuff. We don't really want their stuff. We let them do it because we just have a lot of positive sentiments towards foreigners. Foreign companies have made a fortune in the U.S. by giving them access to our markets. They shouldn't be looking for every last penny, knowing how many families are hurt. They've got record profits, and I'd rather these foreign companies spend it on the great men and women on our docks than machinery, which is expensive and which will constantly have to be replaced. Oh my God. And it might be machinery from foreign countries. It might not be machinery made in the United States. In the end, there's no gain for them. And I hope that they will understand how important an issue this is for me. For the great privilege of accessing our markets, these foreign companies should hire our incredible American workers instead of laying them off and sending those profits back to foreign countries. It is time to put America first. I don't know, guys. I try. I said I try. But I can't take this guy seriously. Now I know. Don't listen to what he says or writes. Watch what he does. But yeah, in this case, he's putting pressure on the ports not to cut a deal, not to force the longshoremen to accept automation. Now it turns out surprisingly, shockingly, I mean, nobody would have expected this, that he actually doesn't know a lot about automation. That the potential gain to port automation are massive, massive. And that the beneficiaries of those gains are not those evil foreign companies that exploit American consumers by selling us stuff we really don't want. I don't know why we buy it. We really don't want it. But the gains from automation accrue to American consumers. The fact is that the cheaper it is to get the goods off the boat, onto trucks, into the store, the cheaper that process is, the cheaper the goods are. The cheaper it is to sell to American people. Foreigners will still make money, and Americans will buy at cheaper prices. If Trump wants to fulfill his campaign promise to lower prices in America, which he has now backtracked from, by the way, then what he needs is automation. Just to give you one example, the gain from increasing a port's capacity by just one ship increases total trade by 0.67%. 100 ships doubles, almost 67% increase in the amount of trade you could do. 100 over a year, that's nothing. You get less congestion, less delays, and much cheaper goods, much more goods. Now, that's the thing, right? He doesn't want more goods. And this, almost all of that kind of productivity gain go to workers, the ones who are not laid off, the ones who stay will be making a lot more money. And the productivity gains goes to consumers, the ones who mine. It's competed away at the exporter level, at the importer level, exporter level. So it's just shocking how bad he is on anything related to actual economics, to the actual workings of markets, and how willing he is to pander to the so-called working class, who he now considers his voters, and who the left has always pandered to. And the left has always pandered to with statism, with regulations, with controls, with minimum wages, with price controls, and all of this. And now Republicans are going to pander to that group with the same kind of mechanisms. And now we literally have nobody advocating for even a semblance of what you might consider broadly or vaguely or a little bit as free markets. All right. So, as I said, I try. One other related one was, we talked about this in the past on past shows. Nippon Steel is buying U.S. steel. This will actually increase steel production in the United States. It will actually, make it more productive. Nippon Steel has better management, better technology than U.S. steel makers. Indeed, steelworkers are actually in support of the purchase by Nippon Steel because they're going to keep them around. They're going to keep the workers around, and they're going to increase their productivity, and they'll make more money ultimately. Nippon Steel, of course, is a Japanese company. The enemy Japan that's fighting us on every front. Oh, no, that's China. Wait a minute. I'm confused. But both Biden and Trump have come out strongly, not even a little bit, but strongly, against the deal. So Biden's going to kill it. Now, I think Nippon could take it to courts, but they might just back off. It might be just too expensive, too much of a hassle to try to challenge it. And Trump has basically said, if Biden doesn't kill the deal, I'm going to kill the deal, for sure. I do not want U.S. Steel, an American company, to be owned by those Japanese. Trump still has a grudge against Japan for having a trade surplus with the United States in the 1980s, when he thought Japan was going to take over the world, as many others did. And so only two issues Trump has been consistent since the 1980s are hating trade deficits, thinking trade deficits were terrible, and immigration. Those are the two issues he's been consistent on. So Nippon Steel will now be buying, more than likely won't be buying U.S. Steel, and everybody's a loser. Again, those are the kind of deals that are win-win. Those are the kind of win-win, and it's not win-win. This is lose-lose politics coming from the party, supposedly, of markets. All right. Just on the economic front, a few other quick stories that we have that we'll cover quickly. Just on the Russian economy, just a note that interest rates in Russia have now climbed to 23%. 23%. We're complaining because mortgages in the United States are 6%. 23% is the government rate. You can only imagine what the mortgage rates are in Russia. Don't anybody tell you that the Russian economy is doing just fine and the Russian economy has withstood the war just fine and sanctions just fine. The Russian economy is in free fall if you measure it by the standard of quality of life, standard of living for the Russian people. When you're paying 23% in interest, things are not good. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that inflation now is double digits. And there's no mechanism by which Russia can fix this, because it has to print huge quantities of money in order to fund a defense buildup, in order to somehow replenish all the lost equipment and that it's suffering, in the field, and of course pay for constantly new recruits, pay North Korea for their soldiers, pay the Iranians for their drones, pay many from the Caucasus for their actually lives. Russia is in deep trouble. I really do think that if Trump lets the war continue and Ukraine can hold out for another few months, Ukraine might find itself in a pretty strong strategic position vis-a-vis Russia, and as the Russian economy really struggles and real pressure starts increasing on Putin to cut a deal. I think if you stop now, as Trump is insisting, I think Ukraine's screwed, and you're going to miss a massive opportunity. Finally, there is a trade deal on the table between the European Union and Latin America, which would like trade as win-win. So it would bolster the economies of both the EU and Latin America significantly. It is a real win-win proposition, kind of opening up trade between those two continents. And there is one bloc that is resisting this. It's a bloc that is actually unites elements from the left and elements from the right. And that is the bloc that supports the farmers. You see, one thing Europe cannot tolerate is competition for food product, for agricultural products. Latin America produces food a lot cheaper than Europe does, and just as good, if not better. And they would flood the market with cheaper, better food, and a lot of French, Polish, other farmers around Europe would suffer and go out of business, as always happened around the world with trade. Of course, cost of living would go down, capital flow into more productive activities, people would find jobs in other industries. Overall, the economies of Europe would improve, but French farmers in particular would not be happy. And it turns out that you need 35%. Basically, governments representing 35% of the EU population to vote against this, to basically veto it. And the decision is going to boil down to Meloni, to Italy. Meloni will decide the fate of this trade deal. And it appears that Meloni is going to side for the trade deal. The analysis done that for Italy specifically, while farmers will suffer, the benefits way outweigh the costs, which is true pretty much of any country. But nobody wants to piss off the farmers. The farmers are a protected class in Europe. So it does look like this will go through. There were quite a lot of French farmers. It does look like this is going to go through. And it's good because, Europe should have a lot less farms. Farming is probably not the best use of European labor, given its educational skills, given the technology Europe has. It doesn't have a comparative advantage in farming, particularly not in mass-produced, pretty straightforward kind of products. Probably they have a comparative advantage in really great cheeses or in really organic, specialty organic kind of stuff, but not on growing wheat and growing other, mass-produced kind of commodity stuff. So it is going to be interesting to watch. It is interesting in terms of the way this is cutting the conservatives, Poland, conservatives across Europe against free trade. Conservatives in Europe in particular have always wanted things to be like they used to be. And the way things used to be is that Europe was composed of a lot of small communities that farmed. And that was great. Everybody was happy. Life expectancy was a lot shorter, and children died a lot, and really kind of life sucked. But everything was the same as it always had been. And they really want to go back to that. So the conservatives in Europe are very much against this trade deal because the number one priority they have is the preservation of tradition, and farming, of course, is a tradition, particularly of more ancient societies, and they have a strong preference for that. So we will see whether the trade deal passes or not. I'm hoping Meloni does the right thing. She often does. She's kind of a mixed character, but she often does the right thing, so I'll give her credit for that. All right. Justin Trudeau. Literally this morning, there were rumors about him maybe resigning. So Justin Trudeau has a Trump problem. Justin Trudeau has a Trump problem. He is committed. Trump is basically threatened 25% tariff on all goods coming in from Canada. And it's not clear what Trump wants in order to not have the tariffs. Like he said, you got to stop sending over those illegal immigrants and the fentanyl. But that's kind of Mexico. That's not Canada's shtick, right? So Canada is afraid that it's going to see a significant drop in exports to the United States. And of course, Canada has to respond to the United States shooting itself in the knees by shooting itself in the knees. So it's going to impose tariffs on American goods. It's already said it would. And that's going to hurt both countries. So both countries are going to suffer. Nobody wins from tariffs. It's all lose-lose. And anyway, so Justin Trudeau is also very unpopular in Canada from everything I read. And so he's come up with this budget with a bunch of gimmicks where, they're going to send $250 check to every Canadian who's working, who who makes less than 150,000 Canadian dollars a year, and they're going to do some other stuff, all gimmicky little things to kind of make Canadians feel a little better. Well, his finance minister has basically said, Freeland, her name is Freeland, I wish it was about Freeland, but her name is Freeland, has basically said, you know, if we're going to face all these challenges from Donald Trump, we better get our own house in order. We better have some capacity here. We can't go spending all our money on these goodies that we're handing out to people. And so she's basically said, no, I'm not going to do that. And they had a fight. And Justin Trudeau said he wants to replace her as finance minister. Today she announced she was resigning and sent a scathing letter about Trudeau's gimmicks, announcing her resignation. There were rumors this morning that Trudeau might resign himself as a consequence, which would be, I mean, the one, you know, a real positive thing that tariffs maybe can do is they can get rid of Justin Trudeau. I mean, would you be for 25% tariffs if we could get rid of Justin Trudeau in exchange? I mean, it seems pretty cheap overall. Anyway, that is where we are. We will watch. It looks like he's already appointed a new finance minister, so maybe he's not going to resign. Maybe he's going to stick around. But supposedly her resignation was a complete surprise. Nobody expected it. Trudeau didn't expect it. Other members of the government didn't expect it. Parliamentarians didn't expect it. Trudeau's gimmicks are not very popular with his coalition partners. Particularly on the left, they would like the gimmick to be even bigger. It's not enough billions of Canadian dollars being given away. They want it even bigger. So Jennifer says Trudeau is Canada's problem, not hers. So she does not want tariffs. All right. So let's hope he leaves and we don't get tariffs at the same time. All right, let's talk about vaccines. You know, and the reason we're talking about vaccines is because, no other reason, but RFK keeps people around him. Like one of the guys who's helping him vet people for different positions within the Health and Human Services Department is a guy who has filed for the FDA to ban the polio vaccine. Because it would be great if polio came back. Wouldn't it be amazing? Anyway, so I looked a little bit into the vaccine-autism relationship, which everybody is talking about and everybody claims as a fact. And RFK just makes stuff up and he bullshits his way through interviews, just making stuff up. And people fact-check him and he just makes stuff up. So I want to be on record clearly, unequivocally. The literature is really unequivocal. It's rare in medical literature to have such a clear, unequivocal, statistical non-relationship. That is, there is no relationship between vaccination and rates of autism, if anything. If anything. In a massive study of 650,000 children, they found, over a 14-year period, they found a non-significant, so it wasn't a significant association, so, you know, not really anything, but a non-significant association was negative. That is, vaccinations was related to lower rates of autism. Lower rates of autism. You can go vaccine after vaccine after vaccine, conventional, unconventional, mRNA, non-mRNA, and you can look at study after study after study. I looked at the COVID vaccine and all the studies that came after it, and there's no question of how efficacious they are, and there's no question that the side effects are minimal. They're there. There are always side effects to drugs and certainly to vaccines. They were there for COVID, but they were minimal. And, you know, anyway, an authority on vaccines, which I like to quote this authority because she's so good about these things, is Marjorie Taylor Greene, who is an expert on these things, as we all know. But Marjorie Taylor Greene tweeted, "I fully believe vaccines cause autism. It's another example of crimes against humanity. And innocent babies, children, and their families are the victims." So basically, I think this proves, without any doubt, beyond any reasonable doubt, that vaccines must not cause autism, because Marjorie Taylor Greene believes they do. So the fact that she's on the side of vaccines cause autism, I think, is good enough to basically... Basically, the one study that found vaccines related to autism was fraudulent. Was a study that's been discredited over and over and over again. Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, if you remember, fires are started by lasers funded by I think it's by the Jews. I think the lasers were funded by the Jews. Anyway, I'm posting on Twitter quite a bit about this, just because, God, I mean, some people who always seem pretty rational, like RFK, so I just want to make it clear that, God, I mean, you can go vaccine after vaccine after vaccine after vaccine and see the results, and the results are astounding in terms of getting rid of the disease. And for those who say, well, but it's good to get measles. No, it's not. As somebody who had it, I had measles and mumps and chickenpox, and I had every one of those childhood diseases, and it was unbelievably miserable. Miserable. And if I could have taken a vaccine and not gotten them, I would have done so in a heartbeat. But in my day, there were no vaccines. So I lived through a non-vaccinated world. And it was not fun having those childhood diseases. And my father was a doctor, so I had a doctor in the house. And it was still unpleasant. Unpleasant. So if I can avoid it, if I can avoid the flu, if I can avoid COVID by getting a vax, why not? Why not? So I'm hugely pro-vaccine, and I don't get the people who like RFK. I just don't get it. And there's absolutely zero reason, as far as I can tell, zero reason to believe that, for example, COVID vaccines, any different than flu vaccines or mRNA vaccines generally, have any long-term consequences. Zero evidence to suggest that. We do know that COVID has long-term consequences for some people. There's RSV vaccine now, which is great, particularly as you get older. RSV really kills a lot of babies and old people. If you're in the middle, you shouldn't care. But babies and old people, RSV is huge. RFK is just ridiculous. All right, guys, I need you guys to step up. We're short on I'm back home. You guys need to show some love here. We are way off the 1 hour goal. And we're way off the 1 hour goal, and we're going to go into second hour and maybe into a third hour. And RSV is not a threat to people in the middle. It might be unpleasant, just like the flu is unpleasant. And some people might be more sensitive to it than otherwise. But if I were in my 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, I would not get the RSV vaccine. Take drugs when you need the drug. You don't, it's not that big of a deal. I actually stopped taking the COVID boosters. I've stopped taking I usually don't get the flu thing. I get colds, and nothing will stop colds. Sadly, nothing will stop colds. So I'm all for, once I hit a certain age, getting all those vaccines. But as long as I'm healthy. Shazbot, thank you. $50 from Shazbot. We need at least one more Shazbot. We need another $50 in the next 3 minutes to make our 1 hour goal. Or you could also ask $20 questions, 2 or 3 of those. Vitamin D and zinc help with colds. The science is very dubious about that. And my experience is sometimes, and sometimes it has no impact. Like this last cold I had, I took a bunch of zinc and a bunch of vitamin D, and it still lasted 2.5 weeks. So, whatever. Vaccines. Oh God, we've got a lot of stories still. See, we could go on and on and on, but I'm not. We need more love. Multivitamins, again, pretty much every study I've seen about multivitamins is they're not effective, certainly not effective against a cold. They're not effective more generally. There's no reason to take. There's no reason to take. But I have, when a female says D takes over 2 weeks to modalities, yeah, but I always take vitamin D. So I've relatively high levels of vitamin D already in my system. I don't need extra. So we are within $25 of the goal. All right, energy. This is pretty cool. So Japan has basically announced today, that nuclear power now, if you calculate it, the costs right, like, for example, when you calculate solar, you have to calculate the cost of storage, the batteries as well. If you calculate the costs right, nuclear power right now is the cheapest baseload energy source that Japan has. It actually beats natural gas, which is really cheap, and solar when you count batteries. Now, granted, natural gas to Japan, you have to import it. So there's natural gas is not cheap in Japan because of the transportation costs, but still, nuclear is significantly cheaper. And as a consequence, after 10 years, the Japanese economy minister has announced that they will remove the statement, minimize its dependency on nuclear from its energy plan draft starting next week. And the roadmap will now have a target, which it used to have before Fukuyama. Before Fukuyama, Japan was committed to getting 20% of its energy from nuclear. And that is the plan moving forward. So looking forward, Japan is now committed to 20% nuclear, and that is phenomenal news. They now have 11 nuclear reactors, 11, in restart mode. These are reactors that after Fukuyama were shut down, and then they said, Fukushima, and then they said they're going to stay shut down. We're going off of nuclear. And right now, Japan only gets 7% of its energy from nuclear. Once these reactors are back on board, they will be well on their way to 20%. Again, this is fabulous, and a sign that the world is kind of waking up to these issues. All right, so yes, so at least Japan is going for 20%. It should be much more for Japan. It's an island. It's very sensitive. For example, if China ever blocked the passageways through Asia to bring in LNG from the Middle East, Japan would have a problem. It would have to rely on American LNG. But a big source of that, natural gas, would be compromised. And nuclear, it doesn't require steady inflow. You don't need a lot of uranium to keep the nuclear going. So I'm hoping that Japan actually starts investing even more significantly in nuclear. And now that they've realized the cost difference, they invest a lot more into their nuclear. And geopolitically, it just makes a huge amount of sense for them. Regarding nuclear, Germany shut down those nuclear power plants. You remember that? Well, Sweden is pissed off at them. Why is Sweden pissed off at Germany? Because Germany shut down the nuclear power plants, Sweden is forced by EU regulations to sell electricity into Germany. Now, because of demand in Germany, that is driving up prices in both Germany and in Sweden. So southern Sweden, where most of the power lines that connect to Germany are located and where the supply to Germany is significant, is seeing electricity prices spike to German rates when there's no reason. Germany has plenty of power. Not enough for Germany as well, but enough for Sweden. The real problems, Norway, for example, is saying that they intend to cut themselves off from the rest of the European grid because they are not interested in selling energy to the rest of Europe. Now, think about that. If these companies were really private and there wasn't a political mechanism that forced sales, Norway and Sweden would be happy to sell electricity to Germany. Maybe at high variable prices, maybe at the terms and conditions and timings of their choice, not guided by some bureaucrat from the European Union. So it is European Union here and government intervention is forcing the Swedes and the Norwegians and other responsible countries to subsidize or to facilitate energy in Germany. And the Germans don't deserve it, given the stupidity of their decision making. And this is coming to a head now with both Sweden and Norway expressing their frustration. I guess a Swedish minister came out and basically took on the Germans and riled against Germany shutting down their nuclear power plants. All right. Okay, a couple of stories on Gaza. What's the time? It's already past an hour of news. All right, I might keep the sex for a different show. So let's do Gaza Deaths. So a report came out by the Jackson Society, the Henry Jackson Society in London, a think tank, a foreign policy kind of focused think tank, that looked at the deaths in Gaza, looked at the numbers that were reported. Remember that these reported numbers, 43,000, 30,000, whatever the number happens to be at any given point in time, all put together by the Hamas Ministry of Health. It's a Palestinian Ministry of Health, but it's run by Hamas. Hamas is the government. And they've been self-reporting these numbers, and nobody questions them. Like the media never kind of says, oh, by the way, these are Hamas numbers. We don't have an objective number. And we do realize, and we do know, that Hamas has an incentive to exaggerate these numbers. Like, most of the media doesn't even report that it's a Hamas number. They just report 47,000 people have died in Gaza. But the reality is that none of these numbers are verifiable, and all of them are controversial. And the study by the Henry Jackson Society gives us massive amount of reasons to doubt that anywhere near the number that Hamas is reporting of civilians have actually been killed. For example, Hamas does not separate out combatants. At least 17,000 Hamas combatants have been killed. And yet, the number they report is as if those are all civilians. 40-something thousand people. What's also interesting is that it turns out that they have misreported a lot of the deaths as being different than what they really were. For example, a 22-year-old is listed on the reports of deaths as a 4-year-old. A 31-year-old is registered as a 1-year-old, which has dramatically inflated the number of children. A number of men were registered as female. Now, maybe there's a huge trans movement in Gaza that after death basically says, oh, well, he was kind of a biological male, but he really identified as a female. So it's a post-death identification trans thing. Maybe that's a thing in Gaza, because certainly they can't do it while they're alive. They'll be thrown off of buildings. So men are identified as female. Never females identified as men. That doesn't happen. That era doesn't happen. Again, with clear motivation to identify more women and children as being killed and fewer men. Here's another interesting fact. They're about the numbers that they're reporting have been shown to include natural deaths, about 5,000 a year. So cancer patients who were listed by the Ministry of Health for hospital treatment, then they die, and now they make the casualty list. Right? And so you get natural deaths added to the list. Now, you know, these numbers are, you know, so now there is a report out that specifically shows the various ways in which these numbers are being manipulated, changed, distorted, perverted, the way they're completely misrepresenting the reality on the ground. And it'd be interesting to see if any news agency, New York Times on, will change the way they report the numbers. Will put a qualifier next to the number when they report it. You know, but the reality is that Israel has killed an astoundingly low number of civilians in this war. Astoundingly, given the density. Right? Now, give you some additional examples. The casualty numbers include Palestinians killed by Hamas or other Palestinian groups. So they include those as well as cancers, as people killed by the Israelis. 10%. They reviewed the study reviewed 1,000 names on the casualty list. 10% had their ages revised downwards to make them children. I mean, it's stunning. 5,000 people who died natural causes were listed. Cancer patients. So when people shout genocide or war on Palestinian children or Israel's murdering Palestinian children, call the bullshit, because it is. It's bullshit. What you're getting here is a war propaganda, and the fact is Hamas is very, very good at manipulating this stuff and manipulating you, manipulating the media, manipulating everybody out there, you know, along the lines that it wants to take it. All right, one last Gaza story, and that is that there seems to be a deal. I mean, we don't find a word, and it might take a few more days to coalesce, but it does seem to be a hostage deal that it will happen in the next few days. We're talking about a 45-day ceasefire in Gaza, although they're still haggling about the exact number of days. The gradual release of a few dozen hostages. Again, there's still some disagreement about how many exactly. These will be primarily men and women. But there's still some gaps in terms of how many will actually be released. Israel, of course, wants a higher number. Hamas wants a lower number. But it's also not clear how many of the hostages Hamas actually knows where they are and can access, and how many of them are alive. That's the other question. Nobody really knows. Israel, in exchange, will release hundreds of terrorists, including serious murderers. Hamas wants them released into the Gaza Strip because they want them as soldiers, or into the West Bank. Israel wants them released overseas to a third-party country. I'm not sure who wants them. Maybe Australia. I heard Australia is looking for more Palestinian refugees. Maybe they can take some of the people that Israel is releasing from jail. I hope not. But also there'll be a reduction, but not a withdrawal, of the number of IDF troops on the Philadelphia axis. Here, if you remember, Hamas was insisting a few months ago that Israel would withdraw completely from the Philadelphia. There'll be a limited return of residents to North Gaza in quite significant numbers. Israel will screen everybody that goes north to avoid armed terrorists moving northwards. And this is important, there's no commitment by Israel to end the war. Although it's hard for me to see how after 45 days, Israel re-engages in a war. It'll be interesting to see what Trump's position on this is. So at the end of the ceasefire, Israel theoretically would go back to war, but it's not clear if that is actually doable. Okay, that is the news. Monday, December 16th. And I will leave the last item that I said I would talk about, the comments on the sex story, I will leave for a future show. That is not time sensitive. So I will wait with that. All right, in the meantime, sponsors of the Yaron Brook Show. We will start with Alex Epstein. Alex, of course, is the author of Fossil Future, the best book out there on fossil fuels, on energy, on environmentalism. Generally, Alex is the best when it comes to these issues. And Alex is somebody with real influence now within, I think, the energy sector in the Trump administration. And a real a voice of sanity, one of the, I think, sadly, few voices of sanity within the Trump kind of universe. And among his advisors, I don't know that he advises Trump himself, but he advises certainly the people who advise Trump on energy. Alex, what he provides you with is just talking points. It's digestible talking points about issues that you're going to confront in your own thinking as you're reading news stories about climate change and fossil fuels, and at the cocktail parties or in the family dinners. Christmas is coming up. He give you the talking points to provide kind of the answers to all your questions. You can subscribe to those talking points at alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. And, just make yourself better educated and better able to deal with issues and questions and challenges with regard to these incredibly sensitive issues they come up all the time. Everybody's impacted with them. All right, the second sponsor of the show is the Ayn Rand Institute. Ayn Rand Institute is promoting a special webinar with Tal Tzfani and Onkar Gate on December 18th. That's in 2 days. Wednesday, December 18th. The webinar is titled Ayn Rand's Roadmap to Freedom. Ayn Rand's Roadmap to Freedom. It'll be on December 18th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a webinar. It's for free. Tal, of course, is ARI's president and CEO. Onkar is ARI's chief philosophy officer. And they're going to explore Ayn Rand's account of cultural change and reveal how ARI is putting Rand's insight to work in its strategy for advancing objectivism. So if you're interested in culture change, you're interested in what ARI is doing and what, check out the webinar. Check out the webinar. And if you're a donor, if you're not a donor, if you think you're becoming a donor, it's a great opportunity to learn more about kind of the strategic perspective. And these two are the best, they're really, really, really good strategic thinkers. They're the best. And you'll get a real sense of how they think about changing the world at the Ayn Rand Institute. So I encourage you to join the webinar. Again, like everything Ayn Rand related, Ayn Rand Institute related, to find out more information about it, you can go to aynrand.org/start here. aynrand.org/start here, and you will get information about the webinar and how to join and all of that. All right. Let's take your super chat questions. We have a lot of them. Yeah, quite a few at the $5. A lot of $5 questions. A lot of $5 questions. But we will start with 50 Australian. Actually, before I do that, I have two other things to do. One is to thank the stickers. So Carolina just did a sticker. Steven has done a sticker. Stinger Bell has done a sticker. Dan Norton. Shazbot did $50 sticker, and that helped a lot with getting to our first hour goal. And we're past the first hour goal, but we still have to work on the second hour goal. Stephen Harper, sticker, thank you. And let's see, what else do we have? We have Eric, we have Jonathan Honing. That's it. All right, so we do have quite a bit to go to get to the second hour goal. So please consider doing some stickers or some questions, whatever you want. We've got time for questions, so feel free. Make them $20, $50 questions if you can. It makes getting to the goal a lot quicker, a lot easier. But of course, we here at the Yaron Brook Show love $1 stickers, 99-cent stickers, $2.99 stickers, and of course, questions at those levels as well. All right, so and then of course one of the goals for next year is going to be to really work on monthly contributors and really hope to dramatically expand the amount of monthly support we get on Patreon and on PayPal. So if you're not yet a monthly supporter of the Yaron Brook Show, you can do so at $5, $10, $20. By the way, if you do it on Patreon at the $10 level, I think, you then get the podcast, audio only, on any platform you want, commercial free. Commercial free, I think for $10 on Patreon. So if you'd like to, for those of you who listen to the show rather than watch it on YouTube, head on over to Patreon and get a subscription. And lastly, if you'd like to sponsor a show, it's $1,000 a show. And lastly, because I keep lastlying, December 31st, 1 o'clock East Coast time, we will be doing our year-end fundraiser. That year-end fundraiser will involve a big, me reviewing the year, maybe projecting into 2025, which is going to be an interesting year. And it will also involve, again, raising money. And we've got a very ambitious goal, huge ambitious goal, which is to raise $15,000 on that show. So maybe some of you are holding back until you do that show, but please don't hold back too much. But that'll be great. We'll do that December 31st, 1 p.m. East Coast time. Join us. All right, Justin. Finally, back to Justin. Has your opinion of Australia's political culture improved or declined since the recent visit? I don't know. Right? I guess declined because I ended up spending a whole Q&A session talking about the monarchy, and with these Australian conservatives who think the monarchy is somehow a good thing, that there's something positive about the monarchy, that King Charles is somehow, and sadly, I think I gave some really good answers, and I really, really, really disrespected King Charles, and I don't think we videotaped it. Sadly, so I'm not sure we'll have it on video. Maybe we will. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we did videotape it. But if we did, then I'll create a short video of all my answers on monarchy. But where did this come from? And then I was also talking to them about tariffs. They're all anti-free trade. They love tariffs. They hate immigration. They want central planning, but smart central planning, i.e. conservative central planning, not stupid central planning, i.e. leftist central planning. So I was very discouraged by conservatives who came to an Ayn Rand conference and who were so far removed from liberty, freedom, free markets in any kind of way. And of course, you have an awful leftist government, and you had a terrible COVID. And if you add all that, it's very, very hard to be optimistic and positive about Australian political system moving forward. Very difficult. Very, very, very difficult. All right. I don't have much more to say about that. I'm still not far from an expert, and haven't really been I've spent very little time in Australia. This time was 4 days. And I got exposed to a good group. Basically, the Objectivists and some of these conservative politicians. And I did get exposed to a pro-Israel group, and I did give this talk on capitalism, which should be going up on my channel any day now, with Brett Hall, a conversation with Brett Hall and Nikos on capitalism, which I think was really good. I think you'll enjoy the conversation. So that'll go up on the channel probably on the weekend. So I don't yet know a lot. Justin following up says, yes, it was disappointing to see such a large conservative contingent at the conference. I don't know if it was large or if they just made themselves, because they were obnoxious, very visible, and they seemed larger than they really were. But there were no free market politicians there, which was disappointing. All right, not your average algorithm. Altruism isn't the primary force holding our movement back. It's even more fundamental. People can't think. Yes, I think that's more fundamental. There's no question. The two are interlinked. The lack of ability to think is what causes people to default on altruism. And altruism is a disincentive to think, because if you're being altruistic is thinking is not helpful for altruism. It's actually not help. It's the opposite of helpful, right? So, yeah. Michael, the best way to solve a problem isn't always by focusing on it. Sometimes it's by defocusing and expanding our awareness that our problems start to look small, and a simple solution arises, if it's even needed. I don't know. I don't know if that's true. It's sometimes helpful to. You need to do a lot of deep thinking about problems that really exist. Now, you might not find the solution until you kind of step away from it and let everything kind of sink in, and then come back to find the solution. And maybe it'll just come to you, like you wake up in the morning and there it is. And yes, sometimes broadening the context shows you that the problem is not real. But real problems need deep thinking. There's no shortcut. You can't solve problems without thinking. And a lot of problems are real problems. Not all problems, in a sense, go away by expanding the context. Some do, some don't. Some become bigger. The more I expand the context, the more I realize, yeah, this is an even bigger problem than I thought it was. The most important problems are those kind of problems. Jennifer, here is some love. Thank you for making sense in an insane world. I appreciate that. Thank you, Jennifer. Robert, Merry Christmas to you, Yaron, and to the whole YBS Army from 5 minutes with Robert and Amy. NASA. Yes, 5 minutes with Robert and Amy is a podcast, YouTube show that you too can experience. Another one of those. Many available out there now with objectivist voices speaking up on a variety of different topics. It's great. All right. Let's see where we are. Those were all the $20 and $50 questions. Let us turn to the $2 to $10 questions. There were a few of those. And then we'll call it a night unless we have more questions roll in, please. Particularly in the $20, $50, $100 variety, $500 variety. That would be great. All right, Soupycast. Your streams are light in the darkness. Thank you, Soupy. See, I love questions like that because they're not questions. And she supports the show. It's $1.99. That's great. Thank you. Raymond. If the government mandate is to protect its citizens' rights, to what degree should it intervene when these rights are violated abroad? I mean, that is a great question and a complex one. It depends on the extent of the violation, and it depends on whether the citizen was warned that a violation might occur, and or the extent to which the violation is outside of what you'd call the norm, right? So one of the jobs as a State Department would be, as it is to some extent today, to say, look, if you go to this or this country, we cannot guarantee your safety. People there are nuts. They're irrational. They're authoritarian. And you might land up in jail, or you might go to Gulag, or you might be beaten to death. And there's nothing we can do. We're not going to go to war over it. Don't go. Don't go. And then it's your own risk if you go. There could be other countries where it's like, look, your rights in France are not going to be as protected as they are in the United States. And as long as they're not massive violations, that is, as long as they're not putting you in jail for no reason, they're not, we're just not intervening. And if they are, we will intervene diplomatically, as again, I think the United States does today. And then, there's the kind of stuff where a foreign country engages in a mass violation of American rights, either by attacking them, killing them, not persecuting people who kill Americans, or stealing American property on scale. And then that requires real government intervention. That is, it requires America to do something. It requires America to force them to stop. You can't just kill Americans. Kill Americans, you die. Or we find the responsible people, we find the responsible regime, and you end. Right? So, if an American is visiting Israel and is kidnapped to Gaza, that is a declaration of war against the United States. There should be American planes and American special forces in Gaza to free the hostages if they're just visiting from America, right? This is a foreign force capturing them. If that happens, they weren't in Gaza. They didn't go into Gaza. If they'd gone into Gaza, he would have said, that's on them. Can't protect you in Gaza. But the Gazans come out of Gaza, invade Israel, take them, take American hostages. America must do everything it can in order to free them, whether that means helping Israel as much as they, to the full extent that they can, or whether it means putting troops in the ground is different. So it really, really, really depends on the circumstances. If you're told not to go to Somalia, then you're on your own if you go to Somalia. If you're told not to go to Russia, you're kind of on your own if you go to Russia. But if, Islamists invade France and kidnap people and take them to Algeria, it is the job of the Marines to go and get them. Right? So, and the same is if the Iranians and the Saudis nationalize American oil companies and just take their property, it's the job of the American government to stop that. To stop that. Or if they're kidnapped in the sea, that's what you have a Navy for. If ships are hijacked or fish, even if the individuals are not hijacked, but if ships are hijacked, if ships are taken over, if they're pirates, job of the American Navy is to stop the pirates from attacking American ships, American crew, ships that are not American but on the way to America. That's what we have our military. So it is the government's job to protect its citizens' rights overseas within a context, within the right context. And it has to be defined properly. Enric, thank you for gifting a membership. I'm not sure who got the gift, but thank you for the gifting. Linda, thank you for the sticker. Really appreciate that. I gifted like 5 membership. I didn't get any thank yous. All right, let's see. We have a $20 question. Enric. Enric says, what do you see as the philosophy of people who avoid ideas but just want to get along? For instance, my mom and relatives dislike and abhor challenging ideas and just want to agree to reinforce being family and friends. I mean, basically, these are people who are, Ayn Rand wrote a whole essay about this called The Missing Link. These are people who are not at the conceptual level. They're not living fully human lives. They're purposefully not thinking, because if they think, they might discover that they disagree with other people, and that might be unpleasant. And they don't do unpleasant. So they don't think. So they never reach the conceptual level. And a lot of people are like this. Even people who appear to be at that level are not, because they won't push it beyond the bromides of what everybody else says. So it's not just about politics. I can understand families saying, we're not talking politics. But it's about life. It's about life. So most people out there, parents, often parents included, but most people, I think, in the world in which we live, are still at the perceptual level. In that sense, they're not yet fully human. And in that sense, humanity is not yet ready for fully human philosophy. It's still at the pre-human level. And therefore, it still embraces a pre-human philosophy, primarily religion, which is a pre-human philosophy. James. The price good people pay for indifference to public affairs is to be ruled by evil men. Yep. We all pay that price. Even if we get involved in human affairs, it turns out there are not enough of us. Just don't talk ideas with your family. Just don't do it. It's just not worth it. Talk ideas, find friends. That's what friends are for. And friends you can choose. You're not born into friendships. Not your average algorithm. What's the difference between a copyright, a patent, and a trademark? Oh, God. Copyright is on a written work. It's like you have a copyright over a book you've written. So copyright is on a written work. A patent is on a patent. It's on an invention. It's on some new idea applied in a material form, in a gadget, in a literal idea for something material and functional, right? And a trademark is on a logo, a brand name, things like that, things that are related to a business that are unique to that business. Ayn Rand actually is trademarked. You can't just use Ayn Rand anyway, right? There's a trademark on Ayn Rand. It's a unique brand, if you will. So I think those are the differences. Liam, acting in self-defense means acting in self-interest, which is why the left hates gun rights. Yeah, it's one of the reasons the left hates gun rights. Ryan, big disaster for Liberal Party in Canada today. The end is near. I sure hope so. Sure hope so. Waiting to see Trudeau fall. That'll be fun. Hopper Campbell, I am actually optimistic. The left is unwinding everywhere. I think we will see more of a free market shift than a fascist shift from the right. I don't know the source of the optimism, but I'll take it. I'm happy to be optimistic, happy to be supportive of optimism. Hope it all happens that way. Life will be better. Michael, the anti-enlightenment and anti-Western impulses people have is just insane. What our intellectuals have done to us is unspeakable. Yes, it really is. They came so close to the right philosophy. They came so close to a pro-human philosophy. They came so close to establishing capitalism and freedom, and to be so anti all the premises that got us to where we are today is just evil. It's just evil. And the consequences to all of our lives are just horrific. Clark says the many pilgrimages of CEOs to Mar-a-Lago are a sad testimony to the death of capitalism. Yes, I documented this the other day where I said what was it? Amazon and Meta were each giving $1 million to Trump's inaugural fund that funds the inaugural celebration. And that's an unbelievable sense of cronyism and further stabbing in the back of capitalism. And I think the kissing of the ring, the trekking to Mar-a-Lago, kissing of the ring is a big part of that sense of, yeah. And yet, Harper Campbell is optimistic, so maybe we're wrong, Clark. Clark says, the more I learn about people, the more I like my dog. Yeah, I mean, dogs can't be wrong. That's one advantage. They're not going to be immoral. They're not going to go against their nature. They're not going to do evil. That's one of the advantages of pets. Michael, is there a scenario where authoritarianism happens fast in America outside of a rapid economic collapse? I don't think so. I just don't see it. The country's too divided. There are too many people who have strong opinions. It's a 50-50 country still. I mean, the election was very close. In the swing states, Trump won all of them, but he won by very small margins. And he won the national vote by a very small margin. So it's still a very, 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 split country. It's hard to see somebody uniting all those people around an authoritarian agenda and killing just a minority. I think in America, you're going to have to build kind of at least a majority accepting authoritarian plank. So I don't see it happening quickly. The ground has to be continuously readied for that. Noel, 50 Canadian dollars. Thank you, Noel. Birds of a feather flock together. You do not approve of Trump, but approve of Musk. Why? Is one of Donahue's shows, Ayn Rand, said she did not approve of John Rockefeller. What value is Musk loyal to? That's what Ayn Rand was loyal to. I've never said I approve of Musk. In what way do I approve of Musk? I don't. I approve of Musk as a businessman. I think he's a terrific businessman. I think he's proved himself to be an amazing businessman, although one has to admit that almost all his businesses have been linked in one way or another to government. I do not approve of Musk when it comes to politics. I don't see any real values that he brings to the political arena. He has this idea of government efficiency, which I object to. I don't want the government to be efficient. I want the government to be to do fewer things. I want the government to be much more limited in its scope. He says stuff that is just silly, like he's going to cut $2 trillion, and yet he can't cut Social Security, Medicare, so that's impossible. So no, I don't think that Musk is one of the good guys when it comes to politics. I do admire his vision and his ability to take risk and to launch ventures and to get them rolling. I mean, the time it took them to launch this AI venture, XAI, is truly stunning. And everybody involved in the project was just blown away by how quickly Musk got it up and going. So he's a builder, he's a creator, and he should stay out of politics because that's not his field. And he doesn't understand it, doesn't know it, and he doesn't have a political philosophy to guide him. So he's going to be pragmatic in politics, and that's not going to end well. It's not going to end well. Pragmatism in politics just doesn't work. Liam says, what was Ayn Rand's view on the Cuban Missile Crisis? Did she believe we should have bombed Cuba rather than imposing wimpy blockade? I don't think she ever said we should have bombed Cuba, but she definitely thought Kennedy was weak and should have been a lot stronger, a lot more demanding, a lot firmer with Khrushchev. So she did believe Kennedy was weak. I don't know if she had an opinion about literally bombing Cuba. Maybe. But I don't think that made it into the essay. There are essays that you can find from that period. Harper Campbell, thoughts on the school shooting today in Wisconsin? I don't really have thoughts on school shootings. I mean, I think that like a lot of these shootings, these are disturbed people, disturbed individuals. Our educational system makes them to some extent. I mean, it's choices they make, but the educational system doesn't help. Makes them disturbed. I think that's why you get more school shootings than other kind of shootings, because they are lashing out at the place that made them the monsters that they are. And these are little monsters who our educational system has bored and bored to death, and put them in kind of a values vacuum from which they, in which they are stuck and in which they resent, and turns them suicidal basically, and they lash out. They become nihilists and they lash out. And a lot of that is our awful educational system. Robert, in the old days, objectivists called this social metaphysics. That's when you care about what other people think rather than about reality. Trump literally doesn't believe in reality. He doesn't. He's a complete social metaphysician. So-called facts are negotiable. Everything's negotiable. And it doesn't matter as long as it works. So Trump is the ultimate example of a social metaphysician, as Rand described it. Nate, would you support Ukraine joining NATO in the next year or so? Are they not too corrupt? I believe NATO said they are. Yeah, I would support them joining NATO just because that would obviously stop Russia in its track and push the border with Russia further. It would basically be a massive defeat for Putin, even if in exchange for them accepting NATO, they give him the territory he's already occupied. It will still be a massive defeat for Putin. But yes, I think Russia needs to be stopped. And NATO membership for Ukraine is one good way to stop Russia in its track and make it clear to them that there's no future in their expansion towards Europe. They've got nowhere to go. Maribel says, missed you while you were traveling. Would you consider having previous guests rotate as YBS hosts? Yes, I was going to have Don Watkins be a regular YBS host while I'm away. It's just there's so many technical little aspects to it. It's just me not getting him up to speed on all of that. But I still need to do that. That is the solution. The solution is to have basically Don do the daily show while I'm traveling. And I'll reconnect with Don about that and try to figure out how to do it effectively. That is, provide him with the technical tools to do it effectively. WCCN. Teal is to an end a Girardian. I used to know what a Girardian is, and I don't anymore. It's like I've erased that section of my brain. So I'm sorry, I don't remember. Frank, let it all loose. What do you think of Liz Warren? I mean, Elizabeth Warren is the worst of the worst. She's an intelligent woman, obviously. But she is an authoritarian statist who wants to stay involved in every aspect of her life. She is a philosopher king who believes that she's smarter than everybody, and therefore she can run all of our lives. She can decide what's good and what's bad for us, and she can appoint other philosopher kings to do the same. She is the worst of the kind of economic regulators. One of the bad things about her is she calls herself a capitalist. She wants to save capitalism from capitalists by basically destroying capitalism. So, she is on the issue of economic liberty, she is the worst of the worst. She's more sophisticated than Bernie Sanders. She's more dangerous than Bernie Sanders. And one of the things that really scares me is guess who has sponsored bills restricting our economic liberty with Elizabeth Warren? Who has sponsored bills with Elizabeth Warren restricting our economic liberty? J.D. Vance, our vice presidential candidate, Republican, MAGA guy. So there you go. All right, guys, we are $54 short of our second hour goal. We have 10 minutes to get there, and we probably have 10 minutes, maybe 5 minutes worth of questions. So if you'd like to help get us to the goal, now is the time to pull the trigger. Have you thought, this is Marshall, have you thought about chatting with the streamer Destiny? He's gained much notoriety in the online politics space, and his platform might serve as useful exposure to ideas of objectivism. I think we've tried. I think there was a debate that was scheduled for us, and then he kind of backed out of it. I don't know. So I don't know that he wants to debate. I'm certainly open to it. If somebody has a platform on which we can debate and would like us to debate, I'm all for it. So it will be great exposure. So it's not something where, remember, debates are not about convincing the other guy. I'm not interested in convincing Destiny of anything. I'm interested in his audience. I'm interested in being able to engage with his audience. So if anybody has an idea of how to set up a discussion between me and Destiny, yeah, set it up. Take the initiative, find the platform, talk them into it, and let's make it happen. Okay, Jim, did you mention Israel today, apart from Syria? Is the military on the move again in Gaza, Lebanon? No, I mean, in Lebanon, there is a ceasefire, so the military is not doing much in Lebanon other than every time Hezbollah moves a little bit or does something that they consider a violation, they knock them out. In Gaza, nothing special. I think the main thing in Gaza that's going on is the negotiations around a ceasefire. I don't think there's any particular action that Israel is going. They keep bombing and killing more Hamas. So they're definitely constantly bombing, constantly shooting, constantly trying to kill people. But there's no big movement in Lebanon. Syria, they continue to destroy the remnants of Assad's army so that they don't fall into the hands of the current new leadership in Syria. They continue to hold on to additional territory, but again, nothing massive. The best thing to get Destiny to talk to me is for you guys to approach Destiny. Much more likely that he will do it if he hears from people than if he hears from me. Jim, was Oxford Union debate published in its entirety? I'm finding only parts of it. Yes, it was definitely published in its entirety. It was actually live streamed. And it wasn't Oxford. It was the Cambridge Union. So you have to go to the Cambridge Union YouTube channel, and it's right there. You might have to look for the live streams, and you can see the whole debate is live streamed right there. Cambridge Union, not Oxford Union. Also, Jim, were you surprised by Steve Forbes' answer to a newscaster that he is for Trump's tariffs? I didn't see it, but now that you say it, I'm very surprised. I'm very surprised. I thought Steve Forbes was better than that, but he, like many others, joins the bandwagon. And it's more important to agree with Trump than to agree with reality. More important to agree with Trump than agree with reality. And I think that's true of so many people. So many people. By the way, I'd love to do an Oxford debate. If anybody's interested, I'd love to come to Oxford to do a debate. Happy to talk about Israel. But the Cambridge one was terrific. And hopefully they'll invite me back because I really enjoyed it. Hunter says, did you ever get your M4 Mac? I love mine. Yes, sitting right here, my M4 Mac Mini, fully loaded, super duper, 64 gigabyte RAM. The M4 Pro, I think it is, the top of the line that they offered within the Mini. Yeah, it's been unbelievably smooth. Whereas with the other older machine, if I had a lot of windows open, everything started to get clunky and slow, and I had to fight with it. So far, none of that. It just does whatever I need it to do. So it's fantastic. It's fantastic. I'm fine with the security guard in where was I? In Gouda in the Netherlands. I had a bodyguard for the whole event because for my whole visit. Because I was doing a talk on Israel, and it was not long after those attacks in Amsterdam on the Israeli soccer fans, and I had a personal bodyguard the whole time in Gouda. So happy to do it. Happy to go to Oxford, and it'll be fun to. I like Oxford. I like Oxford. All right, guys, thank you. Thanks to all the super chatters. Don't forget, you too can support the show. Go to patreon.com, Yaron Brook Show. And I will see you guys tomorrow. I think probably at 2 p.m. East Coast time. And yeah, we'll have shows all this week. And I think Saturday's an AMA. And also, we need to do a members-only show. We'll try to do that in the next couple of weeks. And it's Christmas. So we'll have a pre-Christmas show and a post-Christmas show, and we'll also do the financial regulation show, and we'll do the China show, and we'll do an immigration show, and if you guys want, and if somebody will sponsor it, we'll do a healthcare show. All right, guys, I will see you all tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Monday. Bye, everybody.